Welcome again to the Thinking Man's Temple. Today's topic of discussion is going to be about mental health and PTSD in the Black community. See, something about us is that we love to normalize dysfunction. We love to brag about how real our life was, how much turmoil we survived. Some of us grew up in bad neighborhoods and bad areas, and we've seen a lot of death, a lot of chaos. And we never stop to think that one day, all of this experience would take its toll on us in a mental capacity. We love to normalize dysfunction. We love to think that growing up in places where we see murders, drug dealing, and prostitution, and abuse in relationships, sexual abuse, children being sexually abused. See, we don't ever see these things as what they really are. This is hell, my friends. See, I remember when I grew up, it was in the height of the drug era. Now, if anyone remembers these days, these are usually men over there in their mid-30s, 40s. And the older you are, maybe you have a better or more concise remembrance of these times. But I remember the drugs, the killings, the random times me and my friends would walk to the store and see someone getting jumped, getting beat up, getting robbed, things like that. And depending on where you live, you may have even seen dead bodies or see people get murdered in public. Think of Chicago. Think of the things that these children are seeing. Shootouts in public, barbecues, people shooting up barbecues, things where people are there to celebrate and have a good time, the club, getting shot up, the local bar, someone gets in a fight in the parking lot and gets murdered. These are the things we've seen, no different than a soldier in the field. We've seen death and murder of our friends. I had a friend murdered right in front of me at a party. We were there partying, and someone thought it'd be a good idea. He was drunk and he fell asleep, and someone thought it'd be a good idea to spray air freshener in his face. Now, my friend was no slouch. He was quick with his hands and quick on the draw. We were a rough little group. We used to jump people and fight, and we thought this was normal. My friend jumped up and promptly beat the shit out of this kid. So this kid gets up and goes outside and meets up with his friends. Now, on the let out of the party, we expected to be fighting. This is what we did. So we expected to go outside and be greeted with a fight. But we weren't greeted with a fight. They came back with guns. My friend was killed in front of someone's house. He was shot with an AK-47 in front of a mass of teenagers leaving a party, and they just killed him. They shot him right in front of everyone. No bullets went any way. Nobody got hit by strays. Just my friend. I watched him die. I watched his eyes lose life. I watched him take his last breaths. I watched the blood gurgle out of his mouth. I watched him struggle and the fear of this kid who feared nothing. At that moment, his eyes were in terror, not knowing what was going on, and then realizing that he was going to die. I saw men who are my friends who are men now, at the time, the toughest men on the block, crying tears for this man like children. All of our toughness was taken away from us in that one moment, watching my friend lose his life. I never got over that. I always think of him every once in a while, because we could have avoided that situation. I think of when my uncle died. He was a big drug dealer where I'm from. And one day he was running from the police in his car. He had a brand new BMW, and he got pulled over, and he had an 8-ball of cocaine. And he swallowed it so that the police wouldn't find it. But on his way home, the bag broke in his stomach because his body began to digest the plastic. So he didn't think. And now he has an 8-ball of cocaine coursing through his veins. Now I'm a little boy, I'm around 10, 11, but this memory is like a movie to me. I remember hearing the commotion outside, and everyone asking, what's wrong with you? What's going on? Things being knocked over. And then before I knew it, all the commotion was in front of my bedroom door. And I opened my door to see my uncle, one of my favorite people in the world. He was a smart, intelligent young man. He knew how to program computers. He knew how to take them apart and put them back together. And we would often do it together. He was the first person I worked on a car with. He's the first person to give me tapes of rap, to let me get a listen to this new craze of music. He took me out that day, I remember, to Jamaica, Queens, that same very day, and bought me some school clothes. He bought me some new Jordans. I'll never forget, my first pair of Jordans. And we hung out in Queens and got food. And that night, I watched him die. He was seizuring in front of me. I've never seen a person have a seizure before. He was foaming at the mouth, and everyone was frantic. Now, remember, it's just women around losing their minds because he's literally the only grown man around. It's my grandmother, my mother, his girlfriend. They're all panicking, telling him to turn and wake up, and slapping his face. And before I knew it, the ambulance was there. And now the EMTs took him out of the home. And that was the last time I ever saw my uncle alive. I knew he was dead the next day because I was playing basketball in the yard, and I seen my grandmother and everyone begin to pull up to the yard again in tears. And I knew right there my uncle was gone. And this was me as a child. And then I remember another time when my aunt, my other uncle, was selling drugs in Queens. He was a big dealer. And he got killed dealing with some bigger drug dealers. And he was shot while with my little cousin in a stroller. Shot in the head. And my little cousin was left there as his father was dead. We never talk about this. My cousin's in his 20s now. But he was the son of one of the biggest drug dealers in Queens. I remember being around family that weekend or that day, and we were all having fun, and as my cousins would do, they would come to my grandmother's house, and we would all play video games, and my older cousins would play cards, and we have a great old time. I would love those times when my cousins would come to my grandmother's house. And they would just spend the night, and we just have sleepovers and watch movies, and my older cousins would hang out and drink Heinekens, and it was the best times. And I remember one day there was a phone call that my older cousin was murdered, the one I spoke about. And I remember his sister picking up the phone and going into a panic when she got the news that her brother was dead. I never really got used to death. But then again, I did. I don't go to funerals anymore because I experienced too much death unnaturally. When I say unnaturally, I mean not seeing someone in the casket, resting, dressed, ready to meet their maker, their body ready to be given back to the earth. No, I saw people die, which is a totally different experience. And once I was haunted by those memories, I never wanted to be near death again if I can help it. I never wanted to see another dead person again. I remember again being in my neighborhood, and me and my young friends were playing basketball. And the gentlemen next door to us were drug dealers. And they got into it with someone, and they began to run away. And they ran basically parallel to where we were playing ball. So basically, if we were playing basketball, they ran on one side of the court, and then an assailant with a gun was on the other side, and he shot at them right where me and my friend were playing basketball. My friend Michael, who he died in Atlanta, he was shot. And rest in peace to him. He's one of my best friends when I was a child. And I remember the man who had the gun. I remember looking at him, and it was like he didn't even see us, as he literally emptied a clip in the direction of the men he was shooting at, with no regards for our presence. We got to the ground, and my mother came outside and said, "Get to the ground." And when he left, he ran away, and he kept shooting. Excuse me, he didn't run away, he kept shooting, and we began to make our move, running into the house. And I remember I got in trouble because I took 3 steps and went back to get my basketball. I remember another time when we were children, and these same gentlemen who were terrorizing our neighborhood, you know the type, they got into another altercation where they were getting shot at. And we were in the back at my friend's house fixing our bikes. We always rode our bikes, so we would always be fixing our tires or putting chains on our bikes. And we would just meet up before we take our little excavations. And I remember we hear the shots, and these gentlemen run in everyone's backyard, jumping fences as the assailants rode down the street. And all these gentlemen filed into my friend's back door because it was open. Grown men, none of them grabbing the children and bringing us into the house. No, they were all for themselves. And we ran in behind them, and all we knew that all the glass in my friend's house began to break. They shot his house up. People that had nothing to do with this situation were now in the middle of a gunning blaze. I remember seeing one of my friends jump on a young toddler and cover them from the glass. These were normal things that I saw. And now I know all of you have different stories, and I would love if you share them in the comments, because these things are not normal. A lot of us black people suffer from PTSD from growing up in such hostile grounds, seeing murders of friends, burying our friends, burying our close families, watching people get their brains blown out at basketball games. These are the people that we idolize now, these drug dealers and gangsters that we love to rap about in our music. Maybe it's like a Stockholm syndrome. Maybe that's why black people love to hear the gangster's tale, because they've held us captive in the neighborhood so much that we've developed Stockholm syndrome, or an admiration of them. Something to think about. We as black people, black men, black women, whoever's listening, need to address the issue of mental health. See, I had an issue with myself one time, and I thought I wanted to die, because all of the memories of my childhood began to rush to the forefront of my mind, and it was too much. See, our minds have a way of protecting us. They push things down. I didn't even know and this is me being honest, I didn't even know that I was sexually molested when I was younger. By the woman who was supposed to be babysitting me. The memory came back to me in a rush, and I always, and it was only because this very woman contacted me on Facebook. And she asked me how I was doing. She was always my next door neighbor. And she always asked me how I was doing. And she hit me up one time on Facebook, and we had a brief conversation, and something didn't feel right with me. Like, I didn't want to talk to her. I wanted to avoid her, but I didn't know why. Then maybe a week or two later, the memory of what she did to me came to mind. I was a small boy. She was almost maybe 16, 17, digging in my pants. I never forgot that. But my mind hid it from me. And sometimes these memories come back to us and we can't handle this because it's not normal to live this way. And a lot of men need to really come to the grips that you may have been molested. We love to brag about our sexual conquest of older women when we're young, when the truth is we were being sexually molested and we didn't even know it. These are the things that we grow up with. A lot of black women in our community are sexually molested by their mothers, boyfriends, and men about town. See, these are things that we deal with regularly, and these are the results of people with mental disorders. The violence, mental disorders, the inability for young men and young women to become full-fledged adults in mind, body, and spirit, just in body, because they're suppressing adulthood. This is a mental disorder. This is a psychological dysfunction. We suppress these memories. A lot of men, and if you hear this in the comments, be honest. Think about the first time your conquest with an older woman was. Think about how old you were and how old she was. And you thought you were in control, see? No, you were a victim, young man. You were being stalked by a sexual predator. But we're never allowed to speak upon the sexual deviations of our women. Up till now. And you'll find that a lot of men have shared these experiences. We also suffer from trauma in the home. Being beaten rigorously for small things. See, the beating thing is a product of the slavery. We think that we have to beat children. You don't have to beat your children. We go around and say, that kid needs his ass beat. No, he doesn't. He needs a firm conversation from his parents. Maybe a punishment. But see, we live in a modern era where we grow up with single mothers, and single mothers are working so much, they don't have the time to truly discipline their children because it takes attention. That means you may not be able to go out on the weekend because your kids are grounded. See, we just got whoopings because that was the easy way. That was the cop-out. See, no, that's not normal. Talking to your children is how you discipline them. Kids feel when they're being disciplined. They cry. You ever told your baby no or yelled at your little child and they begin to cry frantically without you even touching them? My niece would be that way. She would do something wrong and I would look at her a certain way and she'd begin to cry. It's the same thing. You don't have to beat them. You don't have to beat them in a tub with extension cords, belts and switches and whatever else. Closed fists, open fists. These are things that we grow up with. These are not natural ways of being raised as children. Normalizing dysfunction. These are not the way things are supposed to be. And here's the issue now as adults. We go into our adult lives and try to function with the rest of society even though we're inept. We're broken people who shun the idea of therapy and rely on church. and praying to God to save us from our demons, when sometimes a little medical professional help is all we need. Black people killing themselves and committing suicide because they don't know that maybe just going to therapy would be the answer. Now, I know therapy is very expensive, but there are ways you can get access to therapeutic counsel at a low price. These are things, some people may need some Zoloft or something, a prescription medication to help them calm their nerves. We deal with the stresses of everyday life. And on top of that, we have a back covered with the claws of demons that hold on to us from our childhoods. And we wonder why we go crazy. We wonder why some men slap their women across the room. When she talks to him, he remembers his mother. Or the woman that touched him when he was younger. Or young men go out and kill another man because, hey, they saw guns go off when they were growing up. What else could they do but not fight? See, they're never taught to fight by their fathers because there are no fathers, so they go right to murder. Trauma, young girls following in the footsteps of their mothers. They get sexually molested at young ages, and the only way that they can have some control over the pain is to be promiscuous and have sex. I had a young woman tell me those exact same words. The only time I ever felt in control when I was having sex. And this young girl amassed 23 sexual partners at the age of 20 because she was molested by her grandfather. These are the demons of the black community. These are the things that we need to fix. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Growing up in the ghetto is like growing up in a war zone for some people. Now, why wouldn't you think that you wouldn't suffer from the same ailments as a soldier who's seen death and murder and guns? What's the difference? What's the difference? You know what it is? You weren't trained to be in war. So the things that may come to your mind from being around these things, you don't even know that you have it. See, soldiers are already prepared when they come out of the army or the military to be, they will assess them for PTSD before they put them back in the world. Because these soldiers end up killing themselves or killing their spouse or their children. Because they are traumatized from the lifestyle of war, bloodshed. It's not normal. These words go out to any of us. Men, you're not invincible. You may have been taught to think you are, but you're not. The mind is very fragile and very strong at the same time. Some of the things you've seen are haunting your memories and your dreams right now. And one day, your mind will get mature enough and certain pieces of your memories will push to the forefront. And you will have access to things you haven't thought about in decades. And I hope you're ready for that. And I hope that you know that when this time comes, to seek therapy. Get help. See, this YouTube thing is therapy for me because I don't have too many people I can talk to in the everyday world. And I know a lot of you other men feel the same. I'm usually by myself. My friends, they don't understand me. We can't talk the way we talk here in the manosphere. We can't be as honest as we can be. Because we can't be honest like this with our women. We can't be honest like this with most of our friends and family. Us red pillars are alone. And that mentality in itself is very dangerous. But this is therapy for us. Why do you think there's so many men that come to this platform to speak out their demons? Because we don't have anywhere else to go. Just like Black Ram 313 says, this is therapy. And there's no lying in therapy. I've told you gentlemen who I've never met things that I don't even speak about in my everyday life. because this is therapy, but this is not professional help. Some of us need to seek professional help. Young women, single mothers, struggling and going through what they go through. See, I left the women out of this one because we all know the mental instability of our women. I had a young lady who I lost contact with because she didn't like the truth I spoke. And she went through an abusive relationship, as usual. Traumas and financial issues. And she finally found some man from her past to marry her. But she had to go and get help in therapy. It's besides the point, but I've never heard of a woman, and I ask any man to attest this, I've never heard of any woman who I've ever known, once I've lost contact with them, that they had something good to say about the last couple of years. It's always been breakups and abuses, trauma, sexual, things that you come to find out and say, it's funny, a lot of women are lucky that men like us are around, because everything else is wolves. So a lot of women are constantly dealing with wolves, and they disregard the men who can actually help them, build them up, give them words of advice, give them light to make them stronger, better, help them with their demons, because we as men have amassed so many. Black men are even holding the demons of their ancestors that were passed down. These women can use us, but they don't want us, so they go through so much trauma that these women have nervous breakdowns, mental breakdowns. They have children, they murder their children, they murder their boyfriends. There was a young black woman who put her children in the oven and turned it on. Another black woman who drove her children into the water and tried to drown them as well as herself. And her son escaped through the car, tried to escape. And he said, the last thing I remember when I tried to get out was my mother grabbing my ankle so I couldn't leave. Think about that shit. He's getting away, and the last thing he remembers is his mother reaching to grab his ankle so he would die. That's some horror movie shit. Another black woman who cut her infant's head off and dangled it out the window. Another one who took her child, an infant, in the middle of the street and set it on fire. Another woman who slit the throats of all 4 of her children. These are things that they are doing. These women are cracking. Women aren't meant to live the way they live. They aren't meant to be sleeping with different men. They're not meant to be dealing with all the stress. Women are not capable of dealing with the stress that men do. See, men, when we take our stresses and hide them, we become rigid, cold, and callous. And some of us, not strong as others, we do have our issues. But women, when women crack, or when women have their nervous breakdown, it's dangerous. But I just wanted to give you gentlemen something to think about, because this is the thinking man's temple. Think about your life. Think about the things you've seen. Think about the things that happened to you. And you tell me, if you're a man in your 30s, you have grown up through the crack era, that you haven't seen some murder. Now, if you were fortunate enough to live away from that, you were blessed, but some of us were not. Some of us grew up in an urban environment, and it was an urban warfare jungle. And we survived it by the grace of the Most High. I've ducked bullets and strays, and I'm shocked that I'm still here. I am a miracle child. Me and my friend used to say it, we are miracle babies, because most of us are not supposed to be here. If you really think about it, you are not supposed to be here. You were walking hand in hand with death your whole life, and you're still here. That in itself is a miracle. So I want you gentlemen to take the time. And if you're one of those men who are on the edge, you need to talk to someone. And suicide is never an option. I have a video saying suicide should never be an option. Seek help, black people. Because we're not meant to live this way. This is set up for a reason. The mental health is something, if you don't take care of it, nothing else in your life will work. And that's the way they want it. So I need you people to go out and figure out what it's going to take for you to shake off those demons so that you can be reborn anew. This is the Thinking Man's Templar, and I want you all to be safe and cover your six.